Another day, another rejection email. Say goodbye to self esteem and hello to more ice cream. I've been there. It's mentally devastating and exhausting. You check your inbox 73 times a day and just hoping that somehow magically between both your phone and your browser that you're somehow going to get the email that you have been looking for saying that you have finally gotten the job. And the thing is, while I won't deny that it's impossible for you to go about getting a job but just by applying, and then maybe, just maybe, someone is going to take the chance on you. The thing is, there's a better way of going about this instead of just constantly putting your nose to the grindstone. Instead, I want you to feel like you have some sense of control, that you actually have a sense of power in this entire applying to instructional design jobs process, if you will. I guess I'll call it that. So on today's video, what we're going to talk about is everything that I wish I knew before applying to instructional design jobs. Let's get started. Hey folks, and welcome on into another nerdy video. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson, and today I want to talk to you all about applying and interviewing for instructional design jobs. I've been noticing, looking at my feed on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth recently, of just how many of you are trying to become an instructional designer, or perhaps you're currently in an instructional design role and you're trying to become a senior instructional designer. And that's fantastic. I am so happy as someone who absolutely loves this field, and I'm clearly obsessed with it and passionate and energetic about everything when it comes to instructional design. But I also know about the realities when it comes to applying for interviewing, waiting for hearing back, and everything of a sort. And I've been seeing so many different posts lately from people just talking about just how disheartening it is, and that they're getting devastated and they feel like they're being ghosted, and that they're really not sure if it's working, and of course, if it's worth it. Now, if you've been following with me for my journey before I finally got this new, nice and kind of cool looking camera for back in the webcam days, you're going to know that my instructional design journey was really weird. I was actually denied from instructional design jobs for years, literally years. I found out about instructional design back in about 2013, 2014, and I kept on applying around and trying to become an instructional designer. And really, it wasn't in my cards yet until finally I tried harder than ever and something actually worked. And that's really what I want to be able to share with you today are my tips, my steps, and hopefully over the next couple of months or so, I'm going to see less postings about people who are feeling that they are getting crushed, that they're not getting jobs. And I am very, very hopeful to see a lot more people of doing the whole celebratory LinkedIn post and saying that they got the job and they're so excited and all that good stuff. So today's video, just a brain dump of all the things I want you to know about when it comes to applying and interviewing for instructional design jobs. So tip number one is decide where you want to work and then make a plan. Now, what do I mean by this? During these interviewing processes, obviously you were the person who is being interviewed, but let's actually rephrase that for a bit, shall we? And what if you were doing the interview? What would you look for in an employer? This is incredibly important to think about because for a lot of you out there, I know that this is the first time that you're actually going to be paid a real salary, especially for all of you teachers out there who are watching this video. And for years, you've been underpaid, overworked, and just really hasn't been that great of a time. So finally hearing that there is a career out there where people are willing to actually pay you what you are worth, I know is kind of like shocking in a sense of like, finally, I can make a living in education and learning. Like, thank God, let's see how this goes. But the thing is, when it comes to chasing that monetary idea, is that there are plenty of organizations out there that, yes, they're going to pay you a high amount, but also, you're buying a one-way ticket to burnout land because they're going to crush you. They're going to start you off at a fantastic rate, but you're going to be working 60 hours a week and doing things early in the morning and nights and weekends. And eventually, you're just going to be right back in the same place you started, where you're like, I'm miserable, but now I'm just working over here as an instructional designer. So instead, if you were to interview an employer, thinking about an organization, what's valuable to you? What would you be looking for? For me, I would say about leadership, culture, diversity, reskilling, upskilling? Do you have a say in the decision-making process? Do they value you as a human being? What a shocker, kind of a thing to think about. Those are the things that I would be looking for in an employer. Now, you're probably saying, well, how do I find out about these things? And that is where there's an incredible website called Glassdoor. Glassdoor is going to give you that insider look, that valuable information that you wouldn't really have access to unless if you knew somebody who was working at the organization, unless if you knew someone who was like a direct connection. Now, everything with Glassdoor, think about it like an incredible type of a review website, if you will, coming from the interviewees. So even people who didn't even get the job yet, they're actually going to be reviewing about the interview and how it went. The current employees and, of course, the past employees. They can go in and leave anonymous reviews about pretty much everything that we just talked about, from the leadership, the culture, the values, the vibe of everything, as well as the salary, talking about interview questions, and everything else of a sort. It's an incredibly valuable tool that I would highly encourage you to use first before anything else. Now, the reason why, and I actually have a great example about this, is because Glassdoor saved me from making a really grave mistake a couple of years ago. I already had the title of instructional designer, and I wanted to go and become a senior instructional designer. That was the goal. So I was looking around and trying to find places, and sure enough, I found an organization that wasn't too far away from me at the time, and I knew that they paid like ridiculously well. I've always worked in higher education, and to go into leave higher ed to go more towards like corporate America, it does honestly pay more. So I was like, maybe I do want to go work here. I looked up the benefits. They weren't so crazy different. So I thought about it and I was going to go and apply. But then I remembered about Glassdoor. I went on over, read more about the reviews of the organization, and I was really just thinking about like, why are they hiring so many instructional designers? It wasn't just one or two people saying, come and join the team. No, it was like 10 postings. So either A, the organization is doing incredible and life is good and they're expanding the learning and development team, or B, something was very, very, very wrong. And sure enough, it was option B. A new leadership team came in, made all of these changes, and pretty much just did not go well with the current employees at the time, and now obviously the past employees. Now, with Glassdoor, how I found this information out is that I was going through the review timeline, and I was able to specifically pinpoint where all of the 5-star wonderful glowing reviews, well, they went away. And now all of a sudden, all these 1-star reviews popping up. And then sure enough, in the cons section and the advice to HR section, which is included in there, it basically just talked about how awful leadership was, from micromanagement to not believing in people to not giving things enough time to change and develop. And just clearly, I didn't want to go there. And obviously, the people who worked there ended up leaving. And now that's the reason why there are 7,000 job postings for this organization. Now, without that Glassdoor information, I wouldn't have known that. I didn't know anybody who worked there at the time, and that was absolutely valuable, key information in order for me to not go and make some massive mistake. And all that was basically a very long way of saying for you to go and find the organization who is going to value you. Find the organizations that have been the top in rankings from leadership, diversity, and culture, and all those other ones for years, and look at them. See, are they currently hiring for instructional designers or for L&D or for any other types of related positions? And then if yes, we'll dive on in further. Look at the job postings and see what they are asking for. What is the magical unicorn person that they are looking for within the job postings? Because, of course, by the way, once again, all job postings basically are asking for the moon and the stars. They want the unicorn. They want that incredible person. So on the job posting, they're going to list out all of the things that they want in a candidate. Are they going to find that in a candidate? Probably not, but maybe. I wouldn't doubt that. But the point is, you can go through a job posting and look at exactly what they're trying to find in a candidate. And then from there, think about yourself and your development, and then assess your own abilities and be able to say that I am fantastic at this, but maybe not so much over here. So this is where I can work on and how I can improve. And eventually, maybe I have a chance at this organization. Now, the other thing too is that pretty much every organization I can think about has more materials online. Imagine questionable than ever before. So if you want to be able to go and try to learn the terminology, the jargon, the culture, if you want to be able to try to essentially like talk shop with people where they feel like you're essentially already a team member, that you're one of their fellow people, you can do that. And you can even find YouTube videos out there of a day in the life of an employee at XYZ place. They exist for pretty much every organization I can think of. I mean, I even made one for MIT of a day in the life of an instructional designer at MIT, if you really just want to see just how research and learning science and super nerdy that my job actually becomes. And yeah, sure enough, if you watch that video, you probably have some more insider information. And the same thing can be said about any of the major places from Apple, Google, Tesla, Twitter, Amazon, you name it. They all have some videos out there, people talking about what it's like to work there, pros and cons, and so on and so forth. Now, if you really want to dive in further into the job postings and trying to figure out exactly like where do you belong in all of this instructional design land, I did a webinar the other day for TLDC of talking about condensing my book, basically what I wish I knew before becoming an instructional designer. And I gave kind of like a crash course on things. But inside of that video, we do specifically cover about job postings, their differences, and where you can find yourself, where you're actually going to see yourself at the organization. And I'll put that video somewhere over this way for you to be able to go and watch it. Tip number 2 is to practice answering interview questions and record the process. What do I mean by this? Well, if you're going to be going into these interviews, chances are you're going to feel a bit nervous and a bit anxious. And really a part of all of that is because of the fact that you're not 100% confident in what their questions might be and how you're going to answer them. So why don't we just get rid of that? Instead, we are going to use a tool that's going to help you with practicing for interview questions. And if you took a guess as far as to what it's going to be, yes, it's Glassdoor. Sure enough, there are going to be interview questions that have already been written down on Glassdoor. Now, once again, of course, absolutely depends upon the size of the organization. Maybe they have something, maybe they don't, but it's going to give you at least a rough general sense of what the interviewers are going to be asking you. Now, I'm going to link down below into the description of the video as far as for just a couple of general instructional design interview questions and actually how to answer them. So I'll put those things down below, and that came over from EduFlow. But you're going to be expecting to have some kind of interview questions when it comes to working with SMEs, talking about the designing process, talking about learning theory, or anything else. There's quite a few general things that are going to be coming up one way or the other, whether you're working in higher ed, corporate, nonprofit, government agencies, you name it. There's a couple of different sectors. But all in all, there's going to be something on learning, the design process, and subject matter experts, and that's who we call SMEs. Once you have found interview questions that do seem legitimate, from here, take the question and just open up something like Google Doc or Microsoft Word, and then go and actually write a script answering the question. What this is going to do is that this is going to build your confidence in knowing how you can actually answer the question. And sure enough, I know that there are definitely plenty of videos and blogs and everything's online talking about how to give an accurate statement when it comes to answering the question. But overall, assess how you are doing and seeing as you are writing down the answers to these questions, and then practice actually saying them out loud. Like literally put the question on like a PowerPoint slide and then using your notes, answer the question. Now, to give this a couple of days and then take away your notes and then answer the question again. Sure enough, there's going to be the question, and then you, once again, practicing out loud, answering the question. And keep on doing this every couple of days. What is going to happen is that by doing this, you are doing something that is essentially a technique known as the spacing effect, where essentially by giving yourself additional time and spacing things out, it is far more likely that this information is going to stick. Now, I did this when it came to studying for my doctorate and doing the oral exams as far as for the comprehensive exams. A part of that is that I had to answer the questions both in writing, and then a couple of days later, I had to defend my answers out loud and verbally actually defend about what it is that I wrote about a couple of days ago. How I figured out how to study for this in an effective way and to essentially memorize my answers in a sense was by doing this, is that every other day I would practice these steps of writing out a script, answering a question that I thought was going to be on the exam, and then eventually I took away my own notes. I practiced saying it out loud from memory, and I kept on doing it as much as I could about every other day or so. And then eventually, over time, I was able to spit out so much information just like that, and it was insane. I didn't think it worked so well until, sure enough, I actually found the research behind why that actually works, and that is indeed the spacing effect. So once this is said and done and you are feeling comfortable with answering questions, well then now it's time to record your answers. The best way of doing this, and why we're doing this by the way, is because we're actually trying to simulate the experience of being in an interview. Because of course with interviews, there's a sense of pressure and you're kind of tense about things. So you want to be able to recreate this in your own way, and the best way of doing this is honestly just with Zoom or a webcam or something. Click record, and then what you're going to see is of course the words of like recording has started and like the red flashing lights. And what this is going to do, it's actually going to trigger just a little bit of a sense of adding in stress and pressure, but just the right amount. And then take the questions that you were answering previously and just put the question on the board or background or whatever it is, and then answer the question. See exactly how you are answering them and look for everything too, especially because we have now been living in this type of Zoom world for a long period of time, that now you're going to be able to see different types of things as far as are with your mannerisms. Are you moving a whole bunch when you're answering the question? Are you saying different types of filler words like like, and things of that nature? If you can actually be mindful of what you were doing on camera while, of course, thinking about how you're going to properly answer the question, it's an absolute home run. It's absolutely going to make you seem like a wonderful candidate who has practiced and dedicated time and prepared and is truly giving it their all in order for you to actually go and land this job. Now, the last part of this tip is that I would highly recommend you to practice speaking to visuals. This is going to come up in the interview, and maybe this is something coming up later on within, say, the second round or the third round, or maybe there's more. Especially for you folks in higher ed, it is very common to have several rounds during the interview process. And as you are going through all of the different interviews, the problems and the questions, well, they're going to become more challenging. They're going to become harder. And perhaps you are diving into something like with your portfolio, and you are certainly exploring, or maybe you are walking somebody through a step-by-step guide of the very beginning as far as for talking about the early initial idea, doing the research, identifying a target audience, talking about the outcomes and the goals to the assessments, until eventually all the way until talking about how the final product has been out and released and what were your results and your findings and your learnings, what would you do the next time, and all that different types of good stuff. Now, obviously, it's important to be able to walk somebody through that as far as like a step-by-step guide, and your portfolio should be able to explain that. But also, you're probably going to be facing a challenge if in the second or third round with the team giving you a challenge or an opportunity for you to really showcase your skills. So let's say that they're going to be giving you something as far as sort of with a super rough idea of a course, and they just want to be able to see you run with it and design the overall learning experience with perhaps having something extremely vague. Or maybe they're giving you a course that is 100% broken. It is not right. The student feedback was awful, and they want to know how you're going to improve it. Or maybe they're just going to give you a general idea and say, run with it. Do the whole thing. We want to see exactly how you go through these motions. But all of those things, folks, at the end of the day, they require you to walk someone through a visual and to describe the entire process. And I know it's not really that normal for you to be able to go and to talk to something in front of a room or a whiteboard or for PowerPoint slides or your portfolio or for an interactive type of a monitor or screen or whatever the organization has. Zoom is probably how you're going to be doing it, unless if you are in more of a part of the world that's gone back to some kind of face-to-face activities. And if so, then become very comfortable with going into a front of a room and once again trying to be able to recreate what that feeling is going to be like. And that's just going to help with building up your confidence and your self-esteem. Tip number 3 is to write down everything you can remember. I remember going through the interview process and just how mentally exhausting it was. By the time I was done, I wanted nothing to do with thinking about the interview, and that's not the right approach. Once you do finish the interview, just take out a piece of paper or a sheet or whatever, and just write down everything you can remember. as far as for the vibe of the interview, the interviewers' names, the questions they asked you, and of course, your answers. What this is going to do for you is that it gives you a bit more of a peace of mind as far as for, well, how did I answer the questions? Did I absolutely nail something? Did I answer a question? Everyone in the room was like smiling and nodding and saying how, like, they're agreeing with you and how great it was. Or perhaps did you answer a question and you completely forgot a key detail that for the next time you do not want to forget about that. All of this type of information, it's inside of your head. You already have it. You just went through that experience. So document everything and as much as you can possibly remember. The one thing about this step that I found incredibly valuable when going through the process myself is that you can't plan around follow-up questions. Like, yeah, you can. You can have like a general sense of what they might be asking you after you go and you present something, but you don't know. However, once you do go through this experience once and you just lived it, well, write down some of their follow-up questions and then once again go back to how we were just practicing in tip number 2 and practice again with the follow-up questions. So practice going through answering an initial question, practice going through walking someone through, of course, your portfolio, whatever it is, and then practice answering the follow-up questions. Overall, if you can do all of those things, it's going to make you feel more prepared and ready for the next time around. The final tip is to rethink the concept of feedback. Why is this important? It's because feedback is kind of hard to come by nowadays. You might be asking, well, why? Because, of course, I know that you are feeling devastated and you're feeling ghosted and you're feeling like you put in all this time, energy, and effort, and the least that somebody can do is to give you a sense of did you do great, or perhaps is there an area that you can improve upon? The problem is that on the other side of the house, the folks who are the hiring managers and the interviewers and the recruiters, they're doing their best, but also they are being super overwhelmed as well. I have talked to many, many people during the pandemic from that side of the house and reaching out to me just saying, do I know a prime candidate who I should go and reach out to right now? Because of the fact that whenever they post a job posting, and one person told me this actually in particular, is that she posted a job in the morning, and then by the evening, she received 200 applicants, and she had to take it down because her team and herself, they were going through it all, and it was just taking so much time, and they didn't have the best way to try to be able to narrow down candidates because a lot of people were qualified for the roles and other people weren't ready for the roles, but they were applying anyway. So it just made kind of like a chaotic mess on the back end. So if that is what they're experiencing, and I just wanted you to know that, by the way, because I keep on seeing those same posts I was talking about earlier of folks just being so disheartened and they can't believe it didn't hear back again for the 27th time after they applied for everything. And they're definitely going through some things as well. So it's really just not a great time for everybody when it comes to applying for jobs. So important that you do know that. But the thing is that if that's the reality of the world that we're currently living in, where feedback is not going to be an option, well, what do you do? Let's say that your interview was on Zoom, a fairly common thing nowadays. Well, the thing is that you did get feedback during that interview, but of course, you weren't really thinking about it at the time. You were much more concerned about answering the questions and being mindful of everything else. So start to actually think about it from your entire experience with that interview itself. When you were speaking, were folks engaged with you? Were they actually attentively listening? Were they writing down notes? If all of those things, well, then all signs point to yes, that you were doing well. If someone is actively listening and listening to everything that you were saying and they're paying close attention, then yeah, you're definitely on the right track. Now, if somebody's body language was super cold and turned off and they could tell that they weren't enjoying things, if they didn't ask follow-up questions, if they were extremely abrupt with you, then chances are probably not doing so hot from that side of the house, or perhaps that person has had an absolute bad day, or maybe the organization is terrible and you don't want to work there. Whatever it is, that's at least some indication of feedback for you as far as, yes, I did great, or maybe I can improve upon things the next time around. Now, the last piece of advice I want to share with you is actually some words of wisdom that my former manager gave me. I was getting ready for a presentation during grad school in this marketing course, and I was nervous. It was a course all about public speaking, trying to sell an idea. The thing was, my professor, she was incredible. She was an amazing speaker. She did incredible in sales her entire life. And what she was trying to do was prepare us for the real world, which now, years later, I greatly appreciate because I actually love public speaking. It's kind of weird how that happened. But at the time, I was not me. This was many years ago. And I was just nervous and so afraid. And unfortunately for myself, I was going last in a class of about 40 people or so, and I saw everyone before me get chewed out, and it was kind of a brutal critique at times. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want that to happen to me. So I was obviously stressing. I had to go to work that day in the morning, and my manager saw me in my dimly lit cubicle freaking out, reviewing my slides, and he looked at me and he's just like, so, Luke, what's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm absolutely nervous. I'm going to bomb this. It's going to be the end of my life. And he looks at me and he's just like, so did you do all that you can to prepare for this? And I'm like, yeah, I've done everything. I have memorized these words word for word for the next 15 minutes. And he looks at me and he's just like, well, don't sweat the small stuff. And everything is the small stuff. I don't know why, but that really stuck with me because it made me stop, reflect, and pause and just think. And I was like, he's right. This isn't the end of the world. If I do screw up in front of my classmates and perhaps some other guest speakers or my professor, like what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm doing well in the course. This isn't going to prevent me from graduating. I'm not going to make a fool of myself because clearly I've been practicing for forever. So I was like, he's right. I'm going to be okay. Now, what I didn't know is that my manager at the time, he actually took this from a book that is actually titled almost the exact same way of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all the small stuff. And the book basically talks about, from a professional development sense, about just living in the moment and taking time to slow things down and really enjoy, relax, and know where you are and to be mindful. This was something that I still haven't read that book yet, by the way, but I keep on thinking about those words of wisdom from years ago, and I just wanted to be able to share them with you because, end of the day, folks, this isn't the end of the world. There's going to be more opportunities, and things like this are going to happen, but you're going to get through it. So overall, keep up the fantastic work. I see you. I hear you. I know how hard you are working. Just remember that luck favors the bold, and all that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. Keep on working hard, and I know that you're going to find the right opportunity in time. Folks, thank you so much for watching this extremely long, nerdy video. If you liked everything today, like, comment, subscribe, and all that other good stuff that people typically say. But most importantly, stay nerdy out there. I'll talk to you next time.